I'm Paul McGuire, and I just finished my new book, The Future of America and Prophecy. And I felt a divine sense, if you will, call to write the book because of the great danger our nation is in. I believe that America is in the greatest danger that it has ever been in since the founding of our nation in 1776. We face the very real prospect of seeing America disappear or die as we know it. In fact, unless there are radical changes in the immediate future, America as we know it will cease to exist. Now that's a frightening prospect no matter where you live in the world, because what happens to America will impact the entire world. Let's just briefly look at some of the critical factors that are facing America. Number one, we have an economic collapse. It hasn't collapsed yet, but it's in a state of economic chaos. Why? Because there are powerful elite forces that control our economy from behind the scenes. Forces such as the international bankers who own and control the Federal Reserve banks that own and control our economy. They decide what the interest rates are going to be. They decide how much money to loan. And they've been propping up our economy artificially through a process called quantitative easing. And quantitative easing is simply printing money from nothing. You print paper dollars, but they're not backed by gold or any real substance. Now, many Americans don't understand that, but our nations that we do business with, such as China, they're fully aware of the implications of printing money from nothing, and they have demanded that our Federal Reserve stop printing money from nothing because it's going to crash their economy. In fact, the other nations in the world are so concerned about our printing money from nothing that they have decided to trade among themselves, and America, which once was the de facto world currency, is no longer the world currency of the world because people don't trust the integrity of its value because it's backed by nothing. Let me give you an example. Nations like Australia and China and Iran and Russia and a growing list of nations are now trading oil, not in US dollars, which they used to do, but they're using their own currencies, such as China's currency, and they're trading among themselves using their own currencies. What does that mean? Well, it means that the dollar is no longer the world currency, which causes the dollar to fall. Now, you may say, well, what right does America have to be the world currency? That's a good question. But the problem is, like it or not, because America is the de facto, or was the de facto world currency, it has created stability and economic prosperity, and it continues to do so up until this very second, because there is, at this moment, no alternative currency that's viable. Now, I wrote a book a couple of years ago called The Day the Dollar Died, where I predicted that the dollar would die, and it's a planned killing, if you will, because there are, again, powerful elite forces that are working behind the scenes, international banking families, and they want to destroy the dollar as the world's currency so that they can bring in a one world currency, because a strong dollar is a barrier to their goal of bringing in a global currency. And they also want to bring in a one world government, a one world economic system, and a one world religion. And they're doing that with lightning speed. This is why I wrote my book, A Prophecy of the Future of America. I wrote it to give a warning based on over 37 years of personal research into economics, my personal interviews with prime ministers of nations, presidents, scientists, economists, extensive research into fields such as economics and geopolitics and military history and the military dynamics of our current world, theology, religion, psychology, sociology, numerous fields, and the intensive study of the scriptures, which I believe are the inspired and inerrant Word of God. Now, that's a key factor in analysis, because you see, if you have a bias against the inspired and inerrant Word of God, you cut yourself off from tremendous sources of information. The Bible contains prophecies from prophets in the Old Testament and men acting like prophets in the New Testament. For example, the prophet Joel and the prophet Daniel and Ezekiel and Isaiah. They gave detailed prophecies that outline the very events that are happening in our world today, but they made these prophecies 4,000 years ago or more or less. The very nations, for example, that the prophet Ezekiel outlines in Ezekiel chapter 38, which is called the war of Gog and Magog. Ezekiel lists this group of nations that are going to invade Israel in the last days. Now, these nations happen to be Russia, Iran. Some people believe Syria is in the mix, or if it's not in Ezekiel 38, it's in Psalms 83. And Turkey, and parts of what is now the European Union. There's going to be, according to the prophet Ezekiel, a coalition of nations led by Russia that are going to move down from the north and invade Israel in the last days with Persia or Iran. Now, you just have to look at your newspaper or the evening news and see that these nations are in the news every day, and the prospect of a regional thermonuclear war or a regional conflict or possibly a World War III looms on the horizon. Just look at the video footage from the major news sources of the naval armadas from the great nations that have sailed into the Strait of Hormuz, and you see these massive naval vessels. They're futuristic, and they contain multiple nuclear warheads, and they've been sent there by Russia and China and the U.S. and many other nations. And the world's navies are all in the Strait of Hormuz. And I go into the real reason why in my book, A Prophecy of the Future of America. They're there not because of setting up democracy. That may be a byproduct of why they're there, but they're really there because of oil. Syria, and I go into this in my book, has enormous oil deposits that were discovered approximately a decade ago. And Russia has partnered with Syria in developing these oil deposits, and Russia has built a pipeline from Syria into Europe, and they sell this Syrian oil to the European Union, to China, and many other nations of the world. And this is a industry for Russia and Syria that's worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Now, America would like to be involved in that oil exporting business. So the United States of America, in conjunction with oil companies, such as oil companies that go all the way back to Standard Oil, which was founded by Rockefeller a long time ago, These oil companies have changed names, but they have worked with the nation of Qatar, and they have access to that same oil that's underneath Syria. And at a moment's notice, if it was freed up, they could begin exporting oil from Qatar, and then U.S. Oil companies and their partners would be able to control this billions of dollars of oil exports. So this area of the world is what was called Eurasia by all the historians and military leaders like Alexander the Great. And Eurasia essentially is Europe and Asia combined into one continent, but it includes all the Middle Eastern nations and every major empire in world history. They all understood that the empire that controls Eurasia controls the world. Brzezinski, who helped to found the Trilateral Commission, understands this. So that's why we have this naval armada there with all these nuclear warheads, because if there's a conflict, what would happen is that Iran would step into the picture. There could be a military conflict with Israel. Iran would potentially try to shut down the oil exports, or somebody else would try to shut down the oil exports. And that's why they have these massive navies in the Strait of Hormuz, because there would be a fight for the control of the oil. So that could easily become a regional war, a regional thermonuclear war, or World War III. And then we're on the fast track to Armageddon or an Ezekiel 38 type of scenario. So these events are converging on the United States. Then, as I talk about in my book and I expose in great detail, America, from its very beginning, there has been a secret occult plan for the future of America. In the mid-1600s, there was a leader, an intellectual named Sir Francis Bacon, who was the head of the secret occult society, the Rosicrucians. And he developed a plan for America to be the head of the New World Order and the New Atlantis. Now, he planned that in the 1600s. Why did he make that plan? Well, because he was able to envision the future. And where did he get that knowledge? Well, I go into this in the book. But this knowledge that he had, I believe, goes all the way back to the secret occult knowledge that part of the human race possessed during the time of the Tower of Babel, or Babel, where Nimrod built this Tower of Babel, and the purpose of the Tower of Babel was to worship the host of heaven. Well, what is the host of heaven? The host of heaven can be stars, but in that context, they were worshiping the fallen angels. Now, when you translate the word Babylon, it means the gate of God. What does that mean? It means that when they conducted the satanic worship in Babylon, that this worship opened a portal in another dimension, a gate of God, and demonic beings, interdimensional beings, came from one dimension into the earth. Now, if you think that's far-fetched, well, you need to do homework, because there's tremendous historical evidence to document that and back it up. And when you really research it, not just make a knee-jerk reaction to reject it because it doesn't fit with what you were taught in history class, which, by the way, it wasn't very much. It will profoundly affect the way that you look at reality. So what happened? Well, in the book of Revelation, Revelation 17 and 18, we read about the return of Babylon in the last days. And in Revelation 17 and 18, we read about Mystery Babylon. What is Mystery Babylon? It was the secret occult teachings that mankind received that were passed on to man by a fallen angel named Lucifer. Now, this angel, by the way, this angel, Lucifer, is currently leading a rebellion against God, a revolution against God in another dimension, and it is his goal to overthrow the throne room of God and to install himself upon the throne room of God. And it is Lucifer's goal to be God. And he has an army of 1/3 of the angels to do this. And he has recruited millions, if not billions, of men and women throughout human history to join him. Now, that may sound far-fetched to some of you, but that's what's happening. Because you see, our world is far more than just what you perceive with your physical senses. Our world has at least 11 dimensions. And we know that because Nobel Prize winning physicists developed quantum physics or string theory, in which they have determined that there are at least 11 dimensions, not just our physical dimensions that we perceive with our senses. And so in this multidimensional universe, there are beings that inhabit these other dimensions, and these beings affect what goes on in human history. For example, God, the personal living God of the universe. Many people who are atheists don't believe that he exists. Well, that doesn't matter whether or not they believe he exists, because he does exist. He created them. They may deny it, but he created them. And so this personal living God of the universe created mankind, and we are in a great spiritual war. The archetypical war between good and evil is going on right now, and America plays a key role, a vital role in this all-out last days conflict between the forces of good and the forces of evil. And that's why it's of paramount importance to understand what is going to happen to America in Bible prophecy and in the future. It's critical. No matter where you live on planet Earth, you need to know what's going to happen to America in prophecy, because what happens to America is going to affect the entire world because of America's unique economic, political, scientific position. It has nothing to do with whether or not America deserves that position. The point is, it does have that position. And what happens to America, spiritually and economically and politically, will affect the entire world. And that's why I've done this research. Now, going back to this secret occult plan for America, and it's vital that you understand this. The knowledge that Sir Francis Bacon got in the mid-1600s as head of the Rosicrucians goes all the way back to Babylon and Mystery Babylon. In other words, the knowledge that they gained at Babylon was passed on through secret occult societies, and it was passed on to Sir Francis Bacon, and it was passed on to the Rosicrucians and others. Now, what must be understood is that it didn't stop in the 1600s. It was passed on to the Illuminati, and understanding the Illuminati and how they affect America, I've devoted many chapters to in A Prophecy of the Future of America, which is approximately 424 pages or so. That affects our future right now. So let's delve for a moment into the Mystery Babylon religions, because we can't understand what's happening now unless we understand the history of mankind and how that affects us as a nation and a world. So what's happening? The world, according to the scriptures, was created by God. Some people believe it's the result of a Big Bang theory. I don't believe the evidence suggests that, because our earth is not the product of random chance. And the existence of humanity, men and women, you and me, is not the product of random chance, which is what evolutionary theory suggests. Evolutionary theory, developed by Charles Darwin, suggests that over hundreds of millions of years, molecules evolved into primitive life forms, which evolved, I'm simplifying it, into chimpanzees, into apes, and then finally mankind. That is impossible. And the reason it's impossible is because that's the equivalent of putting an iPhone on the beach, walking up to it, using the iPhone, making phone calls, engaging the apps in the iPhone, and then saying something preposterous like, well, you know, this iPhone just evolved randomly over hundreds of millions of years of the wind blowing upon the sand and the ocean waves, and after hundreds of millions of years, all the circuitry and the apps were developed. Well, you know that's ridiculous. That's an impossibility. If it took 1 billion years, that could never happen. And the human brain and body is far more sophisticated than the iPhone. So we know that evolution is not an adequate explanation for what is being used as an account of mankind's existence. So we're on the verge of a scientific revolution which is going to shake this planet, and it's going to cause a paradigm shift in the consciousness of men and women all over planet Earth, and it's going to happen very soon. And this is how it's going to play out to one degree or another. We are going to move our scientific institutions, even the Vatican, the educational system, and society as a whole, is going to accept a modified Darwinian theory of evolution. I say modified because the present model doesn't work. So what's going to happen is they're going to implement or develop what I call an alien genesis. And this is seen in popular movies like Prometheus, directed by Ridley Scott. It's, Von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods, the ancient astronaut theory. The idea that extraterrestrials came here to planet Earth hundreds of millions of years ago and seeded planet Earth genetically is going to be the new scientific explanation for mankind's existence. And quite frankly, even though I don't believe that that tells the true story of mankind's existence, it is far more plausible than the current theory of Darwinian evolution. And so that's about to happen, and it will. There are many Nobel Prize winning scientists who believe that, going back to Sir Francis Crick and Watson, who discovered DNA, to many other scientists in recent years. Even the late Carl Sagan believed in an alien genesis. So that is going to be uncovered soon. And it's going to cause a revolution in people's consciousness, their awareness, politics, theology, so on and so forth. And for some people who really don't understand what the Bible is saying, it's going to cause them to have their faith shaken. But there really is no reason to have your faith shaken, because the Bible deals with the concept of an alien genesis in detail. But all of this fits into the secret occult destiny for America. Now let me explain why. In the history of planet Earth, before the flood, there were highly advanced scientific civilizations. Atlantis being perhaps the most famous one. And Atlantis, and then we see the evidences of advanced civilizations through the existence of the pyramids in Egypt, the Incan ruins, the Mayan ruins, the massive temples discovered underwater in the Bahamas, a recent team of scientists who believe that they have found Atlantis somewhere off of the coast of Cuba, where the Bermuda Triangle is, and you see the pictures of these massive structures. And I talk about all these developments in my book, A Prophecy of the Future of America, because they affect right now. Now, what happened is that the general historical record says there was a great cataclysm which destroyed Atlantis and these other nations. Even the Nazis believed that there were super civilizations. They believed in the island of Thule, which had an advanced civilization which came from the stars, and when a cataclysm came, the inhabitants of Thule went and built a new civilization under the surface of the earth in places like Antarctica. And that super civilization was called Hyperborea. And that is the source of all the Nazis' occult beliefs. And we could get into that, but the Nazis, their rocket scientists and their mind control scientists that came into the United States after World War II believed very seriously in this super civilization. And in fact, it was not just their technology and science which allowed the Nazis to be superior in the rocket program. It was the fact that they had these Vril maidens, and that's V-R-I-L. And Vril is an energy force that the Nazis believed in. And these Vril maidens, according to the Nazi scientists, telepathically or through clairvoyance, developed the diagrams to build UFO flying machine technology. Now you can say that's ludicrous. Ludicrous or not, they were ahead of us in the space program. And Wernher von Braun, who was the founder of NASA, a Nazi scientist that we brought here, believed this. Now, I go into detail in A Prophecy of the Future of America about this entire truth, because it's affecting so many scientific advances in our nation now. There's a huge, massive amount of technology that's being hidden in this whole area of what they call aliens or UFOs or mind control or rocketry. But in the secret occult plan for America, I want to reintroduce you to what's on the back of a US dollar. Because on the back of a US dollar, there kind of contains a diagram of what is meant by this secret occult destiny for America. First of all, on one side of the back of the US dollar is a pyramid. The pyramid is the symbol of the Illuminati, the occult society that really does exist. And the Illuminati came from the Rosicrucians, which Sir Francis Bacon was the head of. So that's an Illuminati pyramid, which you see on the back of the US dollar. Now, towards the top of the pyramid is what is called the Eye of Horus, and you see that in ancient Egypt. In fact, you'll see it on the vans of one of the largest cable companies in the United States. The Eye of Horus, or the Eye of Lucifer, is towards the top of the Illuminati pyramid on the back of the US dollar. And on the base of the pyramid, there are the words in Latin, Novus Order Seclorum, which means New Order of the Ages, or New World Order. So this really isn't as far-fetched when you really understand what's going on. And I expose secrets regarding this that I don't think have been put together as detailed in a detailed manner as before. There are many excellent researchers, but I have put together the pieces of a puzzle that I think will give you an understanding of what's really happening in our nation. So, it says New World Order on the base of this pyramid. Why? Because the people that control America, which is not the president, it's not the Congress, it's not the politicians, the people who really control America, the elite, or the scientific elite, they plan for America to be the center of a new world order, which is what Sir Francis Bacon planned in the mid-1600s. Now, on the other side of the US dollar, you see a bird, and most people think this bird is a eagle, but it's not an eagle, it's a phoenix. Why a phoenix? Well, the word phoenix comes from ancient Phoenicia. Now, what is it about ancient Phoenicia that is important to you and I? Well, we're going to get into this in a moment, because understanding the mystery of the phoenix and the mystery of the pyramid helps us unveil the secret destiny, occult destiny for America, which I talk about in A Prophecy of the Future of America. It's important to know where we're going, because all the chaos, and remember, the motto of the Illuminati is order out of chaos, or New World Order out of chaos. See, they use chaos to move a world towards their goal, which is a New World Order. So it's order out of chaos, or New World Order out of chaos. And chaos is the instrument for bringing about this New World Order. And understanding what those symbols mean on the back of the dollar is essential. I'm Paul McGuire, and I have a lot of free information for you on my website, paulmcguire.org and paulmcguire.com. McGuire is spelled M-C-G-U-I-R-E. Free YouTubes and articles and all kinds of resources, because I want to get this word out. A lot of people are asleep. They're walking around like they're androids or robots. And I don't believe we're supposed to be asleep. Knowledge is power. I'm Paul McGuire. I'm Paul McGuire, and we're going to continue on talking about this, the symbols on the back of the dollar. So the question is, what is the purpose of having a phoenix, the bird, the occult symbol, on the back of the US dollar, and then on the other side, the Illuminati pyramid? Well, the phoenix comes from ancient Phoenicia, and ancient Phoenicia was a civilization near the Sumeria, and in this general area was Mount Hermon. And Mount Hermon was the physical location where the Watchers descended from the heavens, who were in actuality interdimensional beings or fallen angels. They descended upon Mount Hermon, which was near Phoenicia, and it was there that these fallen angels began mating with human women. And understanding this is a core concept in understanding the future of America. in prophecy. Now, let's remember the words of Jesus Christ. He said, "As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man." That is an essential verse to understand as we look at what's happening in our world today and understanding the destiny of America, or the prophecy of America. Again, Jesus Christ said, "As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man." Well, what happened in the days of Noah? Well, there was wickedness and immorality that had reached a tremendous acceleration point, and God judged the world through a flood. But it wasn't just the generic wickedness, if you will, of mankind which caused God to judge the world through a flood. There was a specific sin that was committed that I believe was the trigger event which caused God to flood the earth and wipe out every man and woman alive, and the entire animal kingdom, and the birds, and so on and so forth. Now, I show in A Prophecy of the Future of America how that affects our world today. Because you see, I believe that we're in the last days. And I believe that the words of Jesus Christ are true. As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. Well, what happened in the days of Noah? There was interspecies breeding between fallen angels and human women, and a hybrid species called the Nephilim were born, which were also known as the giants of old. Now, people say, well, that's preposterous. But the people who say that's preposterous haven't really researched the text. Because the ancient Hebrew scribes and scholars, when they translated the verse in Genesis 6 about the fallen angels mating with human women, which actually says the sons of God looked at human women with desire and married them or mated with them, depending upon which translation you're reading, the Hebrew scholars interpreted the term the sons of God as fallen angels. They were very specific about it. This Sethite view, which is a different theory that the sons of God really meant something else, is incorrect, because the ancient Hebrew scholars very clearly translated the sons of God as fallen angels or demons mating with human women. And that was the majority view of the ancient Hebrew scribes for thousands of years in interpreting that text in Genesis. And in fact, it was the predominant view of the early church for at least 100 or 150 years. The early church also interpreted Genesis and that term, the sons of God, specifically as fallen angels. It became uncomfortable with this fallen angels having sexual relationships with human women later on, and understandably so. It's an awkward and but potentially pornographic subject. So we can understand why people would be uncomfortable with it, but nevertheless, that's the true interpretation. Fallen angels were mating with human women. And it's only when you understand that you can understand what Jesus Christ meant when he said, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. So the byproduct of the interspecies breeding was that a race of giants was produced called the Nephilim. And God destroyed the Nephilim with the flood. And we're going to get into that later. But in A Prophecy of the Future of America, I talk about the Nazi rocket scientists and the Nazi mind control scientists and the Nazi genetic scientists. Because remember, like it or not, and I'm not endorsing this, but the Nazis believed in a master race. That's what the island of Thule and the inhabitants of Hyperborea were all about. And they got this idea from experimentation being done through Rockefeller-funded genetic experiments, eugenics, in the 1920s in laboratories in, I believe it was New York, the state of New York. In fact, it was the state of New York. And so there was this push to produce a genetically superior race. Now, what's happening now through science is there's a revolution in science which is called transhumanism. And transhumanism is that they're in laboratories taking animal DNA and mixing it with human DNA to create super soldiers and enhanced human beings, because there's certain attributes that animals have, like night vision and expanded hearing and strength, that could benefit a genetically modified super soldier. In addition, there are rumors, they're not proven, there are rumors and allegations that they have rediscovered Nephilim DNA, either deep in frozen caves, up, for example, in Antarctica or other places, or through other means, which we can get into later, that they've rediscovered Nephilim DNA, and they are creating a genetic interbreeding between human DNA and Nephilim DNA. And if that's the case in the science of transhumanism, then we are seeing the fulfillment of the words of Jesus Christ as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. Well, what was Christ talking about? He was saying that the Nephilim, which corrupted the DNA of the human race, and he judged with the flood, that the Nephilim are going to return in the last days. And that is happening through the science of transhumanism. And that is a tremendous fulfillment of Bible prophecy. Now, this is where, in my book, A Prophecy of the Future of America, it becomes absolutely mind-blowing. Because the predictions by Sir Francis Bacon in the mid-1600s open a cosmic door, if you will, to this genetically modified super race, a hybrid race of demon and human, which is an essential characteristic in the last days. Now, I know this is heavy, but when you read the book, you'll understand, because I document credible sources that explains why this is happening and why it must happen, and why we must pay very close attention to the words of Jesus Christ when he said, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. This is the key to not only unlocking Bible prophecy, but this is the key to unlocking America in prophecy. And this is the key to understanding what is happening in America right now in a major thrust of our science, which happens to deal with animal DNA and mixing it with human DNA to create super soldiers and enhanced human beings, because there are certain attributes that animals have, like night vision and expanded hearing and strength, that could benefit a genetically modified super soldier. In addition, there are rumors, they're not proven, there are rumors and allegations that they have rediscovered Nephilim DNA, either deep in frozen caves, up, for example, in Antarctica or other places, or through other means, which we can get into later, that they've rediscovered Nephilim DNA, and they are creating a genetic interbreeding between human DNA and Nephilim DNA. And if that's the case in the science of transhumanism, then we are seeing the fulfillment of the words of Jesus Christ as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. Well, what was Christ talking about? He was saying that the Nephilim, which corrupted the DNA of the human race, and he judged with the flood, that the Nephilim are going to return in the last days. And that is happening through the science of transhumanism. And that is a tremendous fulfillment of Bible prophecy. Now, this is where, in my book, A Prophecy of the Future of America, it becomes absolutely mind-blowing. Because the predictions by Sir Francis Bacon in the mid-1600s open a cosmic door, if you will, to this genetically modified super race, a hybrid race of demon and human, which is an essential characteristic in the last days. Now, I know this is heavy, but when you read the book, you'll understand, because I document credible sources that explains why this is happening and why it must happen and why we must pay very close attention to the words of Jesus Christ when he said, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. This is the key to not only unlocking Bible prophecy, but this is the key to unlocking America in prophecy. And this is the key to understanding what is happening in America right now in a major thrust of our science, which happens to deal with DNA and genetics. I'm Paul McGuire. Go to my website, paulmcguire.com or paulmcguire.org. I have lots of free articles and information for you, YouTubes, research articles that I think will be of great benefit to you and help you understand where we're going in the future. I'm Paul McGuire.